Okay, so welcome to part two of advanced query writing. In the first part, near the end, we talked about an important concept, procedural decomposition. Taking big, daunting projects and, breaking them down into smaller chunks so it's easier for you and me to work at them, tackle them. And so we can actually complete tasks a lot faster this way. It's an amazing tool. We really need to use it. And we're actually going to use this into effect in this query today because this is going to be quite the query. This query is going to have a select statement, it's going to have a parameter, it's going to have detail query, it's going to have a hyperlink columns, it's actually going to have two hyperlink columns. So this is a really, really big query. And so actually breaking it down into small chunks like we are going to do today is actually going to help us a lot. And it's going to help you writing your own queries, break it down into chunks, just this practice. Okay, so let's say I wanted to find the amount of times a word was repeated in the Quran with tashkil, with fatha damakasha, how many times it was repeated. Okay, so I think that's enough information to get us a good title. Word repetition with tashkil. Okay, so we know that, hey, we're going to be looking at word repetition with tashkil. Title, it tells us more than enough. It tells us, hey, we're looking at how many times a word repeats, right? And we're including the tashkil. But the description should tell us how the query runs and all the features of the query so that it is more, so that it makes more sense to the user when they're actually reading it. And so that they actually know everything that this query can do. Because you might have added one, two, three, four hyperlink columns, a parameter, a detail query. But if the user does not know how to use them, how to access them, right, then all your work is fruitless, you know? So make sure you have a description, make sure you tell you all the parts of your query. So you can say, we will see all of the times a word repeated in the Quran or a given surah. Okay, part one, or a given surah. We will see, right? Sorry. We will be able to click on the word and see the ayahs that the word came in, and then we will be able to to click the ayah and navigate to that ayah. So wow, this is a very long description, but hey, it's telling us everything that query does, and the user who reads this, okay, we can see the amount of times a word is repeated in the Quran or a given surah. Given surah, hey, it means it's talking about a parameter. I know that there's going to be a parameter. I know that there can be some information that I can put in, right? And if you don't put in any information, then I know it's just going to default to the entire Quran, right? I know how that looks, and I actually know how that code looks like, right? If you watch the last video, you will understand what I was talking about. We actually know what that code looks like. We've actually figured out a part of the query that we're going to write. We will be able to click on the word and see the ayahs that the word came in. Well, if we click on a word and see the ayahs, we know that's going to be a hyperlink column, right? And then if we see the ayahs that the word came in, well, this hyperlink column obviously has to be running a subquery because our regular query won't be able to actually display that information, meaning a subquery or detail query must have been made, and then we will be able to click the ayah and navigate to that ayah. We know that this is another hyperlink column, and this actually has to be in the subquery, as after we click the word, we see the ayahs that are there, meaning the subquery was run, and then being able to click on the ayah means that the hyperlink column is attached to the subquery. Okay, a lot. Description was hefty, it was long, but it actually told us all the parts of our query, right? If you did not know that we had a query parameter, detail query, hyperlink column 1 and 2, then this description actually tells us all of that information. You just have to be looking out for it and you have to be vigilant, right? This is why descriptions and titles are key, important, right? Title, word repetition with the skill, that, I want to see how many times the word's repeated in the Quran with the skill. That is really cool information, you know? And it's a great way to test someone if they're hafiz and stuff like that. So really, really cool. Okay, so let's start writing the query. We're not going to implement the parameter yet, right? We're going to implement that afterwards. First, let's just write the query. So obviously we're going to need a select statement, but what do we want to select? Well, we're going to select, obviously want to select the word, right? But we're also going to select the unique word ID. Unique word ID. We're going to select the word, and we are going to count all of it. Okay? We are going to count all of it. So this is what our select statement is going to do. Now, why do we call the unique word ID? So if we actually look at the top, we said we're going to be able to click on the word, right? That the we're going to click on the word and see that see what I as the word came in, right? Well, if you remember, and this was stressed in the last video, right? Make sure you watch the last video. That the database navigates everything via numbers, right? It's very number based. It's not word based like we are, right? We navigate on if we want to go to Surat al-Nas, then we know to look for Surat al-Nas. We don't try looking for 114. We try looking for Surat al-Nas. Database is the opposite. It tries looking for the number. Unique word ID is the number that is attached to this unique word, right? And so we know it's an integer. And if you do not know that, then please read the documentation. Become familiar with it. It's going to help you a lot in your query writing. We know that it's a number, and this is actually going to help us navigate to that word and eventually navigate to the ayah in our subquery. So the unique word ID is key. It is one of the biggest parts, and it's a key component of the hyperlink column. That's why we have unique word ID, right? And we were able to get all this from the description, right? And also, you know, when you're writing the query, you know what you want the query to do. This information is going to come to you, right? But you have to make sure that it's very planned out, that everything you want is very planned out. That way it's going to become so fast when you're writing the query, and you're not going to encounter many problems. Okay, count all. What are we counting? Well, we're going to get to that later in one of the last clauses that we use. So, from. What are we doing? Where are we getting our information from? Well, we're going to need the words table, obviously, words W, and we need to join that on the ayahs table. Now, why are we joining with the ayahs table? Well, the ayahs table has a specific piece of information that is actually going to be important for our parameter. And if you actually watched the last video, you might know where this is going. But we'll get to there when we do the parameters. But for now, let's do ayahs on w.ayah serial number is equal to a.ayah serial number. Okay, and now I'm going to explain why we have the count function. We have the count function because we're using the group by clause. What does the group by clause do? It basically collects all rows that have the same information and it collapses them down to one row. All right. So let's say the word let's say a word like Rahim or Rajim repeated, right? Instead of having two different rows that has the same unique word ID and that contains the same exact word, we can just group them by the word ID, by the word, so that they become now one row. And then the count tells us how many rows were actually collapsed into one. So I kind of gave us what we're grouping by. We're grouping by the unique word ID, and we are grouping by word. All right, we're grouping by both of them, and we need to group by both of them because if we only group by the unique word ID, then well, we need to also group by the word because if the word has the same unique word ID, that means they're exactly the same. And so count is going to tell us how many times the group by function was used. Okay, let's save this and let's run this query. Okay, as you can see, the query worked, right? It unique word ID 7922 for Sirat. Sirati. And remember, this is with the tashkil, which means with fatha dhamma kasra, right? So it gave us this word only showed up once in the Quran, which means if you really want to test someone about their Quranic knowledge, ask them where did this word come from with this specific tashkil. But if we go down here, we can see that the word yakunu has a unique word ID of 7,990 and actually showed up 13 times in the Quran. So if it was not for this group by clause, right, this would actually be 13 separate rows, but it would all hold the same information, which isn't really helpful to us. Having group by clause, really cool. And if we see over here, the word ظلموا showed up 38 times. That's a lot of times. So we can actually learn a lot about the words, the Quran words, inside the Quran. And as you can see, the word Allah showed up 592 times. That's the highest number we've seen so far with unique word ID 1,498. You know, so just looking through these numbers, really cool, really fascinating, you know, and kind of it gets you excited, you know, about the Quran. And this is actually what these quizzes are for, to get us excited about the Quran. Okay, so we had that first step. Now, let's filter our information. How are we going to filter information? We're going to filter it by the surah. We know that we're filtering it by the surah, as we said in the description. And how do we filter by a surah? Everyone should know this by now. If you have watched any of the videos, please refer to them. We group by the surah serial number, okay? We group by the surah serial number. This is how the database reads it. And let's just call our parameter surah number, or at surah number is equal to 0. And if you do not see the last video, if you do not know what this means, then please watch the last video. What this means is, or it's basically mean this or that. So if the user did not give them a surah number, right, then what are they going to do? They're just going to default the surah number to be 0, to be the entire Quran. 0 means all. 0 means the entire Quran. Great. So we added the where statement. Now let's add the parameter. Display name, surah number, and let's just do a surah drop-down list, okay? So surah name, display name, when they see the parameter, it's going to say, hey, my name is surah name, telling us, hey, select the surah name. Do you know that the name of the parameter is surah number? And a surah drop-down list is the go-to way to choose surahs, because humans, as us, we navigate the Quran via name, while the database navigates it via number. And so let's save this. Let's run this. And now I can choose what surah, right? So when I click on Surah Al-Fatiha, I read Surah Al-Fatiha over here, but the database sees it as, oh hey, you are asking for surah serial number 1, and it filters all the information where surah serial number is equal to 1, right? Even though that the word table did not have the surah serial number table because it was connected to the I table, it also filtered it in information that way. Okay, so now we can see the words in the Quran, all the unique words that came in Surah Al-Fatiha and how many times they repeated. And as you can see, Rajim and Rahmani, they actually showed up twice in the Quran, right? And so we see that it showed up twice. We added the statement, but now, you know, I see that Rajim showed up twice, Rahim showed up twice. What 2 times did these show up? Alayhim showed up twice. What two ayahs did it showed up in? I know that it showed up once in Surah Al-Fatiha, but what's the other surah? What's the other surah that had this same exact word with this same exact tashkil? That's what the detail query is for. So now we need to make a detail query. Okay. And so when we run this detail query, right, we said that if we can click on the word, alayhim, right? It's going to show us the ayah. So what information about the ayah is important, right? Well, we know that we're going to want, the ayah serial number. We want to know the serial number of an ayah, right? Why do we need the ayah serial number? Remember, we navigate via the serial numbers, right? So, so having this information, really important. It's going to allow us to actually navigate to that ayah. We want to see the ayah itself. And remember, we said we're going to be able to click on the ayah in our description. So we need the ayah. We also want the surah serial number, right? Because we want to know which, surah this came in, right? The number that it came in. And then we also want the surah name to actually see the name of the surah. The number is meaningless without the surah name. Okay. We know what things we need. And if you are familiar with the documentation, if you are not familiar, please become familiar with it. We actually know all the tables and which tables these columns come in. So I can say w.ayah serial number. I can say a dot aya, I can say a dot surah serial number, and I can say s dot surah name. I'm familiar with the documentation. I know that the ayah serial number came in the words table. I know that ayah came in the ayahs table. I know the column surah serial number came in the ayahs table. And I know that the column surah name came in the surahs table. Perfect. Now, where are we getting our information from? Where are we getting it from? Well, obviously we're getting it from the words ayahs and surah table. And so we actually need to connect them all. How do we connect them all? We use join statements. So we're going to be joining words W with ayahs A on the basis that W dot ayah serial number exists and it is the same exact as A dot ayah serial number. We join those two, and now we're gonna join surah's table with the ayahs table. Word does not have the words table does not have the column that's in the surah's table, so we're gonna join the ayahs table with the surah's table on the basis that the ayahs table has a surah serial number column, which is the same exact column as s dot surah serial number. And the amazing thing about the document, about the databases and the names of the columns, is that if it has the same name, that means information in it is also exactly the same. And it allows us to connect all these different columns together. Okay? Allows us to connect all these different columns. So let's not do the where statement yet. All right? Let's just run this detail query. Let's run this detail query by itself. And let's just put in that we just want to run this detail query and we just want to see if this works or not. So it's loading, and as you can see, it does work, right? It does work. So as we can see, this showed up 4 times because Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim actually has 4 words in it, so it showed up 4 times. Showed us the ayah serial number, shows us the surah serial number, and it also shows us the surah name that it came in. Okay, perfect. So we know that our detail query works. We know that it's working just fine. Okay, now we can filter our information. How are we going to filter our information, right? How are we going to filter our information? Well, we said we're going to be able to click on the word. And the word is going to show us the information that we get from the detail query, which means there has to be something from the original query, right, that's actually going to get us, that's actually going to allow us to see the ayahs that have this specific thing. Now, that was very vague wording that I used, right? But we have the thing, we have unique word ID, right? W.unique word ID. And remember, unique word ID is a number. So we have unique word IDs. All right, what does unique word ID do? Well, we know that unique word ID is actually the number associated with that unique word. And so we can say that is equal to the parameter unique word ID. And this is not actually going to be a parameter, this is actually going to be a hyperlink column. But a hyperlink column is just another form of a parameter. When we click on it, it's actually sending that information over here. Okay? And then we can do and a dot surah serial number is equal to at surah number, or at surah number is equal to 0. We've been through this statement enough times. We know exactly what it does. We want this to be executed first, and to be executed without this in mind, and then this is going to be the hyperlink column. So we can save this, we can save all of our progress, we know exactly what the detail query does, and we actually know how to get the information via the hyperlink column. We know that unique word ID is a number that's going to actually allow us to look for the specific ayah that has this unique word ID. Because remember, we have the words table. The words table has unique word ID over here. So if we filter information by this, all the other information is also going to be filtered by it. How do we get it? We get it by the hyperlink column by actually clicking on it. So hyperlink info type is a subquery, right? It's a subquery. This hyperlink column is going to be linked to the first query, right? backing column name, unique word ID. Unique word ID column is only in the first query, so we know that this hyperlink column is going to be connected to the first query, alright? We know it's going to be connected to the first query. Its info type is a subquery because it's going to go through the subquery to actually produce the output. The targeted column name, let's do word. Word is going to be the targeted column name. Let's make sure that it's called word. Yes, it's called word because we want to be able to click on the word itself because remember, we associate with the words. The database associates with the numbers. Let's add this hyperlink column. Let's save this. And now let's run this. Okay, so now we can see that the word has become a link now. Word is now a link. And so we can see that ilayhi or ilayha, I'm sorry, I can't really see it because of the link, the harakat on the ha, we can see that it shows up 4 times. So if we click on this word now, give it some time, it's going to run. If we click on this word, we can see that it showed up 4 times. I want to see what 4 ayahs just came in, right? We click on it, and right now it's filtering all the information where this specific unique word ID came in, and now we can see, hey, this word came in Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th surah, ayah serial number 1143. Okay, this came in Surah Al-Maryam, this specific word with this exact harakat. This came in Surah Al-Rum, this exact harakat, and this word with the same exact harakats came in Surah Al-Jum'ah. Okay, so really cool information, right? Now we can see where وَيَعْلَمْ, right? The 10 different times وَيَعْلَمْ came. What 10 surahs did it come in? Did it show up twice in a specific surah? This is now going to allow us to see that information, all because of this hyperlink column, right? We added the where statement, we added the hyperlink column, and now we were able to do that. Okay, so we have this. We can see that the word وَيَعْلَمْ came in Surah Al-Imran, came in Surah Al-An'am, came in Surah Al-An'am, so it came in Surah Al-An'am 3 times, came in Surah Al-Hud, came in Surah Al-Anbiya, Surah Al-Nam, Surah Al-Luqman, Surah Al-Shura, Surah Al-Ta'bun, and Taghabun, and those are the 10 surahs. Those are the 10 times it showed up in. It actually showed up in Surah Al-An'am 3 times. Very interesting, really cool. Okay, so now we added the first hyperlink column, right? Now, so we have it, but now let's say I want to go to that ayah itself. I want to click on the ayah and actually go to that ayah. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, hyperlink info type, ayah serial number. This is why we have the ayah serial column, right? It's type, it's ayah serial number, so it can just navigate straight to there. The backing column name is going to be ayah serial number, and the targeted column name will be the ayah. Okay? Backing column name, this is where it's getting information from. This is how it's a hyperlink info type. This is a type of information it's going to be getting. Alright? This is where it's getting its information from. This is actually the column that we're going to click on. Remember, we associate with ayah. We don't actually associate with the number. Let's add this hyperlink column. Let's save. And now let's run this query. Now, for example, I can click on the word yakunu. I can now click on the word yakunu. I'm going to see which 13 times this word yakunu came, right? The 13 different eyes it came in, and then I can actually click on the eye itself. So I can see that it came in Surah Al-Tawbah 3 different times. I can click on this ayah. Now, hey, now I've actually gone to this ayah, and I can look for where yakunu came in this ayah. So I'm looking. Okay, yeah, see? So now we can see exactly where yakunu came. You see right here, we can see yakunu exactly for how it is, tashkil, word repetition, where it came on. Okay, so we finally finished the query, a really big query, and it actually allows us to do a lot. It allows us to look for the word repetition. Um, so how are we able to do this? How did we get from here? How do we get from nothing to here? You know, this seems like a lot of work. And remember, it's because of procedural decomposition, right? We first had a column like this, where we just had unique word ID, word, and column 1. This is all we had, right? We had nothing else, right? This is all we had. We first made a very basic query, right? Then we added the parameter to search by the surah. Surah Al-Imran, right? That added that. Then over here, what we added the fact to click on the word, but then also be able to see which ayah it came in. Then we added being able to actually go to the ayah. And we also tested out the subquery in between this phase. So we actually had 5 different tests that we did. We broke it into 5 different chunks. And then we always added something new. And that's how we got from nothing to this really big query. Alright, so procedural decomposition, really important. It's going to help you make really amazing queries. And actually, if you go, let's save this. If you go to the home page, and if you click on Quran Wiki, just like in the last video, you can actually see this same exact query, Quran repetition, with the skill, how many times it's repeated. We have the query description, we have the query documentation. No documentation has been uploaded for this query, okay? And then we can actually run the query itself. It's only going to give us the first query. It's not going to give us the detailed query, but we can run it, and you can see it's actually the same exact query that we coded, alright? So now I get to see, hey, where did Rajim come, right? Or Rahim come? So I click on Rajim. Oh, it came once in Surah Al-Fatiha, right? And it came the other time in Surah Al-Fatiha. So it came both in Surah Al-Fatiha. Okay, now I know where it came, you know. If, you know, I was paying a little more attention, I would have realized that they were both in Surah Al-Fatiha. But, you know, I was caught up in the moment. And, you know, it allows us to see, hey, where did this ayah come? Allows us to filter by the surah. Lots and lots of stuff. We broke it down into 5 different steps, right? And it allows us to get this amazing query. So remember, implement procedural decomposition. You know, try to break down these big queries and these big ideas you have into smaller parts so that you can be able to make amazing queries like this one as well. Remember, if you want to see the query, you can go to Quran Wiki, and if not, then you can code it yourself by watching this entire video all over again. Okay, so Assalamualaikum, and have fun writing your own queries.